Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the April Recreational Astronomy Night of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, Toronto Centre. My name's Tom Luton. I'll be your host for this evening. Now, it looks a little quiet here in the audience, and that's clearly because everyone is at home watching the Artemis launch. But we'll proceed as planned. For the record, we didn't know this was going to be happening this evening, so here we are anyway. Anyway, our program this evening is The Sky This Month with Arnold Brodie, who will be joining us remotely. And then we have a longer than normal presentation coming up, appropriate considering it's April Fool's Day. Jeff Booth will be talking about how to fool the world. Before we get started, is there anyone here for the first time? Welcome. So, and we'll also have announcements with our president, Scott Masterton. So let's get the ball rolling with The Sky This Month and Arnold Brodie.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending or joining online. I'll cover what's up in the night sky for April and the first few days of May before we meet again on May 6th. Sky scenes will depict the stars as seen from Toronto. The first highlight is Mercury reaching greatest elongation west of the Sun in a couple of days from now, Friday, April 3rd. Comet C 2026 A1 MAPS reaches perihelion on Saturday, April the 4th. Around 1 in the morning on Monday, April 6th, the Moon rises 6 degrees ahead of Antares. On Saturday, April 18, a thin crescent moon sets with Venus not far behind. The next evening, a slightly thicker crescent moon hangs out with the Pleiades and Venus in the western sky. The Lyrid meteor shower peaks on Wednesday, April 22nd. And there's free public stargazing on Friday, April 24 at Millennium Square from 6 to 11 p.m. Hope to see you there. And anybody who knows me probably saw that coming. The following night, Saturday, April 25, the moon will graze Regulus as seen from Toronto and will occult the star for others further west and south. Comet C 2025 R3 Pan-STARRS passes through perigee on Sunday, April 26. And once again, the moon rises side by side with Antares, clearing the horizon just before midnight on Sunday, May the 3rd. And closing out the highlights is the peak of the Eta Aquarid meteor shower on the night of May 5-6. April is also prime time for galaxy hunting to go along with these highlights. The observing window is 9 hours long tonight, but it will shrink to 7¼ hours by May 5, a drop of 1 hour 49 minutes. Night shrinks even more, losing over 2 hours to the sun, and will continue to shrink until the end of June. So, I guess one of the advantages of observing in April is that it's better than May. And there are no mosquitoes. April begins with a full moon, as does May. New moon, what I like to call no moon, occurs in the middle of April on Friday the 17th. So I'll use the April 18-19 weekend for a number of the sky scenes later on. And the names given to the April and May full moons describe the transition from winter to the start of spring. Now then, let's begin our tour of the sky with the solar system. April begins with Mars and Mercury appearing west of the Sun, rising in pre-dawn twilight. In fact, we have an unusual scenario with Mercury appearing higher in the sky than Mars. Venus is east of the Sun, placing it in the west in our evening sky, and climbing higher because it orbits the Sun faster than we do on our rock. On April the 3rd, Mercury reaches greatest elongation west of the Sun. And by the first week of May, Mercury will be out of sight, diving into the Sun's glare, and behind it a week later. Venus will have climbed another 8½ degrees away from the Sun, appearing somewhat higher in the evening. And Mars will also climb higher in the pre-dawn sky. In mid-April, Jupiter is well placed east of the Sun to be viewed for a few hours after sunset. Its elongation is less than 90 degrees, placing it in our western sky after dark. Uranus getting close to the sun, it will become a difficult catch, setting soon after the sun. And by mid-month, Saturn will be struggling to emerge from the sun's glare in the morning. Your best opportunity to spot little Mercury is on its current pass. On its current pass is this Friday morning. And here we see it 7 degrees above the horizon Friday morning with the sun about to rise. And notice how far below the ecliptic Mercury is. And that's because Mercury's orbit is tilted by 7 degrees to the ecliptic. On April 3rd, Mercury will be 1.5 degrees south of the ecliptic plane and will reach its maximum southern inclination on June 3rd. Mercury is at dichotomy on the 3rd of this month with clear and steady seeing. Could you possibly see its first quarter phase? Be careful and stop viewing immediately after sunrise. Venus will gradually climb higher in the west after sunset throughout April, and at magnitude negative 3.5, it will shine like a beacon, announcing the start of twilight and of night to follow. And here we see Venus in astronomical twilight on the first Saturday in May, when it will be 87.5% illuminated. With enough magnification and steady seeing, you may be able to recognize its gibbous phase. Mars and Saturn are both gradually climbing higher in the pre-dawn sky, and with sufficient magnification, you may be able to detect Saturn's slowly widening rings. Mars is too tiny in the eyepiece to reveal any details. We'll need to wait a couple of months for these two planets to be visible in pre-dawn night. Now, Saturn just passed inferior conjunction a week ago and will eventually reach western quadrature, appearing 90 degrees west of the sun and due south at sunset on July 6. An opposition will come in early October. And if you want to see details on Mars, you'll have to wait until its opposition next February, when the small planet will appear 13 arc seconds wide. 10 arc seconds is considered the minimum needed. Jupiter, the brightest point in Gemini, is receding from us on its way to superior conjunction when it passes behind the sun on July 29. On the no moon weekend, if we're fortunate to have above average transparency and seeing, you might still detect the cloud bands and watch its 4 Galilean moons dance about. Uranus can be glimpsed in astronomical twilight before it too slips behind the sun on May 22nd. Try scanning the sky 4 degrees south of the Pleiades. There are no bright stars in a binocular field of view centered on Uranus, so you'll know you found Uranus if you can detect its steady blue tint and circular shape. We have 2 interesting comets swinging by this month that have the potential of eyes-only visibility. First is Comet C 2026A1 MAPS, discovered just 78 days ago on January 13. This comet has the potential of reaching magnitude 8, maybe 3. Comet MAPS is a Kreutz, a sun grazer, one of many huge fragments of a giant comet that broke up during perihelion 2 millennia ago. The source of this fragment may have been the gray comet of 371 BC, Aristotle's comet, that was seen to break into 2 as it swung around the sun and spawned tails that stretched a third of the way across the sky. This class of comets is named after German astronomer Heinrich Kreutz, who proposed this theory in the late 1800s. The name MAPS is an acronym of the discoverers' last names: Alain Murray, George Attard, Danielle Parrot, and Florian Signoret, 4 French astronomers working at the AMACS-1 observatory in the Atacama Desert in Chile, using one of these fast 11-inch Schmid telescopes equipped with a CCD camera. Kreutz family comets have long 1,600-year orbits and have produced a number of gray comets when they venture close and are superheated, releasing an enormous quantity of debris, producing spectacular tails stretching up into the night sky, like this cruise sungrazer, Comet Lovejoy, seen here in 2011. Now, comet maps will be grazing the sun just 161,000 kilometers from its surface, well within the sun's corona, where the thin atmosphere reaches 3 million degrees Celsius. Now, there's a reasonable chance that C2026A1 will not survive perihelion and will disintegrate, leaving us with no comet to observe. And you can actually watch in essentially real time by checking out these LASCO 3 cameras when comet maps reaches perihelion around 10:30 Eastern time on April the 4th. So go online on April the 4th around 10:30, call up these images, and you will see the comet streaking behind the occulting disk, and if it doesn't emerge from the other side, then we've lost it. But if it does survive, look west 45 minutes after sunset between April 8th and the 14th to the lower left of Venus. We could see a spectacular tail, prompting some to suggest that we're going to be calling this the Easter Comet. And if that happens, it could reach magnitude 3, easily seen by the eye alone after dark. So here's hoping. Various astronomy websites are suggesting the second comet, C2025R3 Pan-STARRS, could also become a naked eye comet, reaching magnitude 2.5 as a result of forward scattering of light. C2025R3 will be visible to northern observers in the late pre-dawn sky until the third week in April, when it swings below the ecliptic and favors southern observers. Our best opportunity would be the pre-dawn hours leading up to and including the no moon weekend of April 18-19, when there is no moon interference. Now, when the tail of a comet comes between the sun and earth, dust and ice crystals in the tail reflect and enhance the apparent brightness of the comet by scattering that light towards the observer. So there we have it, not one but 2 possible naked eye comets this month. The Lyrids, or April Lyrids, is the first meteor shower since the Quadratids in January. The Lyrids are so named because the radiant is close to Vega, the brightest star in Lyra. The shower is debris shed by Comet Thatcher and has the highest zenith hourly rate from the debris of a long period comet. Thatcher has a 415-year orbit. Anything over 200 years is considered long. While the radiant is rising, a 39% waxing crescent moon in the west doesn't set until 2:37 in the morning. But the shower has a 2-week active period, so your prospects are good of catching some of the Lyrids during the previous no moon weekend. Now, the radiant begins to rise soon after sunset and climbs almost to your zenith by 5 in the morning. And the April Lyrids have the potential of producing fireballs. Outbursts occurred in 1922 and 82 when rates peaked at 90 an hour, and there was a famous outburst in 1803 with 700 an hour. That would be like every 5 seconds. The Eta Aquarids have a broad peak. Activity is good for a week centered around the peak, predicted for the morning of Tuesday, May 5. The radiant rises at 3 in the morning and night officially ends 1 hour later, so the approaching dawn will start taking over the sky. Meanwhile, the moon will also limit visibility. It will be up that morning in waxing gibbous phase, 88% illuminated. We might be lucky and get some earth grazers in the east earlier in the night before the radiant rises. And this shower favors those watching from the southern horizon, where the rates can reach 60 an hour. For us up here north of the equator, we're lucky to get 10 to 30, but again, that moon's going to wash out most of them. About a month ago, Sunday, March 8, a very bright fireball was seen over Belgium, France, Germany, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Fireballs were also spotted over Vancouver on March the 3rd, and then 5 in as many days in the U.S. Cleveland on March 7, California March 19, Michigan and Georgia both on March 20, and in Texas on March 21, a meteorite crashed through the roof of a home and came to rest in a bedroom. Witnesses reported hearing sonic booms and people started collecting meteorites from these fallen fireballs. These fireballs are, in particular, these fireballs are not big chunks of debris shed by comets. These are asteroids. In particular, they are fragments shed by asteroid Vesta in collisions in the solar system's early formative years. These are stony, igneous rocks commonly composed of calcium-rich feldspar and pyroxene. At the rate of one a day, you have to ask, is spring fireball season? Now, fireballs occur throughout the year, but there does appear to be an uptick of reports from the Northern Hemisphere in March and April, but nobody knows why. Spring is fireball season, said Bill Cook at the NASA Meteoroid Environment Office, speaking to spaceweather.com. For reasons we don't fully understand, the rate of very bright meteors climb 10% to 30% during weeks around the vernal equinox. He added that meteorite fragments hitting the ground are more common in spring as well. Oh, this ties in with their Vesta origins, since these hard fragments will survive longer in their descent, if not hit the ground, giving more people a chance to spot them. And it gives them a chance to dive within 5 to 12 kilometers above the ground where they can generate sonic booms. So maybe, just maybe, you'll see a fireball when out observing or when driving around. Now, the sun climbs a little over 12 degrees from today to May 6, taking away 2 hours of night as a result. It crosses from Pisces to Aries on April 19. Last week, the LASCO cameras on board the SOHO spacecraft recorded large flares erupting behind the sun's east limb, the side that's rotating towards us. Unlike the moon and planets, astronomers define east and west sides of the sun as the left and right sides with north up, for no good reason I can see. The regions responsible have since turned towards us. Region 4403 was firing off M-class flares as it rotated into view, but has since calmed down. The top 3 flare producers lately have been regions 4401 and 4404 in the north, and prominent 4405 in the south. 4405 has generated some interest in the last few days. It tied region 4404 for the most flares on March 29, and it has an impressive 5% possibility of producing both X-class and proton flaring as it rotates into view. Breaking news: 4405 has blasted an X flare launching a CME towards Earth. We can expect more to come. 4405's blue positive and red negative poles are large and well-defined and look impressive through white light filtered scopes. However, the best chance for geomagnetic storms on Earth come from massive coronal holes that develop during the decline of a solar cycle, which 25 is in. The holes stand out as dark voids in this video. They channel fast solar wind protons and electrons outward into space. They can raise geomagnetic conditions to unsettled or active levels, boosting aurora chances in the coming weeks. These holes can persist over multiple rotations. On to the moon. There's a full moon tonight. The moon reaches apogee next Tuesday, shrinking well below half a degree. Then last quarter on April 10, when it's exactly half a degree wide. A week later, we have new moon for our April 17 through 19 stargazing weekend. Perigee is on the 19th when it appears 0.56 degrees wide. As the moon recedes from us, it reaches first quarter on the 24th, then back to full again on May the 1st, and then its next apogee on May the 4th. And speaking of the moon, it's time once again to grab your popcorn and watch Close Encounters of the Lunar Kind. This coming Monday morning, you can watch the moon rising 6.3 degrees west of the heart of the Scorpion, first magnitude Antares Alpha Scorpii. While rising, the moon just misses occulting Pi Scorpii as seen from Toronto. It is occulted for watchers along the U.S. East Coast. Antares is an evolved red supergiant and one of the largest stars visible to the unaided eye. If placed at the center of our solar system, it would extend out into the asteroid belt. On Saturday of the no moon weekend, the moon does make an appearance, but a pretty one, as a super thin crescent leading the way for a brilliant Venus on nearly magnitude -4. The following night, a still young crescent moon and Venus share the scene with the Pleiades setting as night approaches. The Pleiades setting with the sun marks the end of winter, the time to sow crops, and begin sailing again. Pleian, the source of the word Pleiades, is the ancient Greek word to sail. The Moon Pleiades Venus trio could make for an interesting image. Here's a suggestion using a Canon T5i and a 100mm lens. Now here's a great example of a close encounter. On Saturday, April 25, depending on where you are, the moon will either graze or occult the heart of the Lion, magnitude 1.4 Regulus. Occultation occurs for viewers inside the red circle in this animation. Notice the occultation occurs in the daytime in the western states and provinces and Mexico, then crosses into nighttime over the East Coast. There is a pocket of southwestern Ontario, including the north shoreline of Lake Erie, and the Niagara Peninsula, that falls inside the red circle around 2050 or 8:50 p.m. The occultation continues in nighttime for observers in the Caribbean and Central and South America. Whereas the moon grazes Regulus for observers in Toronto, those watching from the London Center can see the star occulted, a real-time example of lunar parallax. With your telescope set up and ready to enjoy the moon's close encounter with Regulus, this would be a good time to study a prominent crater and a candidate in the Explore the Moon observing program, crater Eratosthenes. On the 25th, the solar angle over the crater will be low at 7.2%, producing long shadows that highlight features. Eratosthenes is positioned at the eastern end of Mons Apenninus mountain range that separates Mare Imbrium, the Sea of Rains, from Sinus Astum, the Bay of Hot Days. This prominent crater is named after the ancient Greek astronomer Eratosthenes of Cyrene, who estimated the circumference of the Earth within 2% of today's value, and the distance from the Earth to the Sun in the 3rd century BC. The rugged circular crater is 59 kilometers wide and has very tall walls with terraces. And see if the low sun angle will help you identify this rough rampart on the northern side of the crater's rim. The rugged floor is dominated by a mountain with 3 peaks. The height of the crater's rim dwarfs the central mountain peaks. The rim is higher on the western side. The sun's low angle will help you appreciate the rim's height. The sky in mid-April, facing west after sunset, is your time to say goodbye to the winter constellations, and hopefully we can say goodbye to winter's cold as well. It's your last chance to check out the 3 Messier open clusters M36, 37, and 38 in Auriga. And the Gemini twins make one last stand partway up the western sky as night approaches. Leo rides high in the south in April, leading the way for galaxy season. Thousands of galaxies are waiting for us, running through Coma Berenices, Virgo, under Leo's belly, and all over the sky in the south. If you are out past midnight, you can turn east and get a preview of your summer favorites, like Hercules and Ophiuchus, and the return of the great globular clusters, like M3, 5, 13, 92, and more. Cygnus the Swan is just about ready to rise and take flight, soaring up to the zenith by August. In the north, Ursa Major and its collection of galaxies are too low in April to enjoy. Instead, you can focus on the Andromeda Galaxy, just outside the circumpolar circle, high in the northeast and climbing higher. For deep space, springtime is galaxy time. If the ecliptic of our solar system were parallel to the galactic plane, we'd see the Milky Way in the night sky all year round. But because our plane of our solar system is tilted by 60% to that of the Milky Way, there will be seasons in which our nighttime sky faces away from our galaxy, and spring is one of those seasons when our view is out into intergalactic space. There are thousands of galaxies of various magnitudes up in April, meaning there are some within range of binoculars, some suitable for modest telescopes, and faint fuzzies needing larger scopes. Let's start hunting with binoculars, which you'll want to have stabilized. 2¼ degrees southeast of Chertan, the star in the bottom right of Leo's hindquarters, sits the famous Leo triplet consisting of Messier's 65, 66 plus NGC 3628. With the light gathering power of 15 by 70 binoculars on a transparent moonless night, it should be possible to see all three of the triplet. NGC 3628, also known as the Hamburger Galaxy, is the faintest of the three and may not show up in smaller binoculars like 10 by 50s. Another candidate for binoculars is M104, the Sombrero Galaxy. To find it, make an isosceles triangle with the stars Spica and Porrima in Virgo with Jana in Corvus. Trace halfway back up the sides of the triangle to find the triangle's midsection, where you can search to find a bright object appearing stretched out east-west. That's the Sombrero Galaxy, 28 million light years away, shining at magnitude 8. That's about half as far away as the Virgo cluster. It's much closer to us. Now, M104 is a great target for modest telescopes as well. Here we see a stellarium approximation of the view through an 8-inch telescope at 78 times magnification. And you should hopefully detect the opaque band of dust that encircles the spiral galaxy, seen edge on, and makes the galaxy resemble a sombrero. The opaque dust band is a tempting target for astrophotographers too. Now, let's dive into the Virgo cluster, home to 2,000 galaxies around 54 million light years away. And of these, there are a dozen brighter than magnitude 10, making them accessible in small telescopes. The Vera Rubin Observatory obtained this image of the southern portion of the Virgo cluster, revealing the vast differences in size and colors of the galaxies in this part of the sky. The image is zoomable and fascinating to explore. You'll find elegant, grand design spirals dotted with hot blue stars, all the way to old galaxies distorted and pulled apart as they interact. And if you're interested and want to take a look at this, here's a QR code that you can scan later on. Watch a replay of this and scan that QR code to take you to that zoomable image. Now, among the dozen of bright Virgo cluster galaxies is M86. To star hop to M86, find the halfway point of a line running from Vinimatrix at the end of Virgo's raised hand to Denebula, Leo's tail. If aiming with RA and DEC, you'll want right ascension 12 hours, 24 minutes, and DEC plus 12. With the light gathering of a 10-inch reflector, your field of view will reveal a small swarm of galaxies, including Messier's 86 and its nearby friend 84, and at least 2 galaxies from the new general catalog, 4388 and 4402. Now, at magnitude 8.9, M86 is the brightest of all the Virgo cluster galaxies, and M84 is a very close second. Both have around 400 billion stars, on par with our Milky Way galaxy, whereas the two NGC galaxies are magnitudes dimmer, although around the same distance from us. They are simply smaller than their Messier neighbors. M86 and 84 are more than just neighbors. They are 2 of 8 galaxies that are gravitationally bound together and traveling in the same direction as a group. And that group is Markarian's chain, named after Benjamin Markarian, an Armenian astrophysicist who determined their mutual motion. With a wide field telescope like an 80 millimeter refractor, you can compose a stunning image of the 8 galaxies drifting through the cosmos together. And I'd like to close with a double star. Algaiba, found in the sickle of stars defining Leo's head and mane. It's a true binary consisting of 2 giants off the main sequence in an elliptical orbit with an estimated 544-year cycle. Under moderate magnification, the pair splits into a colorful double. And that's all I've got for tonight. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Arnold.
Hello, can you hear me?
So, do we have any questions for Arnold online?
Hi, can you hear me?
Nope. All right, we've got no questions then. So, Arnold, thank you very much for the presentation. Wonderful effort.
Thank you.
All right. We'll have a quick over to fun facts while we get ready for our next speaker.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for being here on April 1st, an exciting day. We're going back to the moon. How exciting is that? Now, tonight's topic is a little lighter. It's how to fool the world. And there's your Joker's cap. So I have a question for all you smart people in this room. What day is today? Oh, don't be shy. Come on. It's what? Okay. Come on. It's April Fool's. You know that. It's a very special day. Now, this presentation, as you're probably already guessing, is going to be a little bit lighthearted. We're going to be looking at some spoofs and some hoaxes and some other stuff too, perhaps some standout examples. So relax, enjoy the moment. This is definitely a low impact evening. Hopefully we're going to learn something and be better for the experience. So April Fools, where on earth does it come from? Did you know that in ancient Rome there was a festival? I've had a hard time believing this. There was a festival called Hilaria. Not Hilaria Baldwin. Hilaria, it was the name of the festival, not a god or a goddess. It was actually the name of the festival. The April Fools has evolved over the centuries, especially in Europe, to be a day for lighthearted fun. Now, in recent history, it often seems that some form of media is involved in an April Fool's hoax. Now, when it comes to authoritative media voices, reputation and integrity is everything. Now, the British Broadcasting Corporation, I know, is widely regarded as one of the world's most trusted and authoritative such voices. Of course, it regularly faces intense criticism in the UK, but the BBC holds an authoritative voice across the world. So, how come they publish this on their website? The Earth has exploded, killing everyone. Everyone's dead. We're all dead. I'm writing this from the afterlife. Obviously, this was a few years ago, certainly on April 1st. It's a favorite of mine, and some of you probably see me post this pretty well every year. Let's go to another hoax. We'll get into some more serious ones. Does anyone recognize this? Who likes kittens in this room? We all love kittens. This hoax, which came out around 2000, was called Bonsai Kittens. Launched in 2000 by a Massachusetts Institute of Technology grad student using the alias of Dr. Michael Wong Chang. Bonsai Kittens was a website that purported to promote the bonsai treatment of kittens inside jars, so that as the kittens grew and grew larger and developed, their skeletons would be formed by whatever jar they were in. Many people believe this hoax website to be legitimate. They complained to animal rights organizations. They even complained to the FBI. Well, the FBI and several other organizations, including the Humane Society of the United States, looked into this and debunked the idea that this was really serious. Getting a little more sciencey. Who in the room recognizes this? No. Anyone else? It's dihydrogen monoxide. In 1983, a newspaper in Durand, Michigan, which is northwest of Detroit, current population of Durand right now is getting close to 4,000, you know. They published a parody on dihydrogen monoxide using the unfamiliar chemical systematic name, dihydrogen monoxide. And in their article, they reported some concerning voices about this molecule. They reported it was an industrial solvent, coolant. It was used in nuclear power plants. It was a fire retardant. It was used in the manufacture of styrofoam and used in, trigger word here, used in cruel animal research. It was involved in the distribution of pesticides. And even after washing, your produce is still contaminated by this chemical. It's an additive in certain junk foods. You see all those trigger words? Now, this was 1983. that's getting up there in years, but it's still around. This was a couple of years ago. SpaceX is dumping deadly dihydrogen monoxide into a nature reserve. Deadly? Well, yeah, water can drown you. Today, I found this website. It's still out there. Okay, we're going to come back to this sort of stuff. Okay, time to be honest with everyone publicly. Does anyone know who this man is? Okay, no one's admitting, and I'll tell you his name. It's Erich von Däniken, who in, oh yes, some people in the back are going, oh, I know that guy. 1968, he published The Chariots of the Gods. Who here had a copy of Chariots of the Gods? Dr. Ralph Chu and Jeff Booth and everyone else is going, not me, not me. So von Däniken, who was Swiss, published more than 40 books, some say up to 49. His works always explore ancient astronaut hypotheses. His works have been translated into more than 30 languages, and he sold millions of copies worldwide. A couple days ago, I went on Amazon.ca, typed in his name, and this is what I got back. This is only the start of it. There's pages and pages of his books still for sale today. Now, he certainly has been praised for sparking imagination, offering compelling conversational reevaluations. He has come under some sharp criticism. The core premise of much of his work is that ancient civilizations couldn't have done what they did without the help, the advice of extraterrestrials. Some of his book reviewers have written, riddled with logical and factual errors, relies on argument by assertion. That was assertion. Failing to provide a rigorous proof for his bold claims. Here's one of his bold claims. This statue from the late Jomon period in Japan dates quite a long time ago. Anyone have one of these at home in your library? Wish I did. Well, anyhow, this was interpreted by von Däniken as depicting an alien visitor. It's actually a dogu figure. It often shows as a humanoid or even an animal, and the actual figure shape changes depending on the time and the region of Japan, ancient Japan. Von Däniken also posited that the Nazca lines high in Peru were actually perhaps landing strips for alien spacecraft. And I must tell you, I was a teenager when I bought this book, and my wife was too, and we were both rather thrilled by it. Ralph, you too? Yes. In one of his later books, The Arrival of the Gods, Däniken also published some images from Nazca, which appear to show some sort of humanoid form. And von Däniken posited that these were likely pictures of the extraterrestrials themselves. Mind you, that idea had rather been published earlier by someone else. But we'll come back to this later on again. But how about you in this room and out there in the internet? Can you create your own hoax these days? You don't need a newspaper. You don't need a broadcasting corporation. Well, I say absolutely, because I've done it. Here's a small sample using more modern technology. Some of you may be familiar with tabloid newspapers. Here's one. This is actually from 1993. That's when Clinton was first, he was the new president back then. So I took this front page from a supermarket tabloid, and I asked an AI, an artificial intelligence generator, for the man and the alien on the left, they will show shock and surprise when a flying saucer arrives and, with a death ray, light up the building to the top right of the picture. You're making fun. So here's what AI returned. It's true. I saw it in the newspaper, folks. Now, if you're looking for something a little gentler, we are, after all, the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. Let's wave the flag a little bit with a pretty little beaver. Isn't she adorable? That was done in seconds. And I have never done this before in my life, although I've done hoaxes, but I've never done a hoax that was based in AI. It literally took me seconds to come up with this. Well, I didn't come up with it. I gave the AI generator some money and some words of description, and this is what it came back with. Now, I know you don't recognize any of what's going on here, but it is kind of cute. Let's go to someone who's looking up his lawyer right now. Someone more familiar. The room falls silent. Someone's getting on his phone to his lawyer. Ralph, thank you so much for your courtesy and your kindness. I owe you a big one. I probably won't have any air in two of my tires when I go back out to the parking lot here. Who remembers The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells? What a thriller. Published in 1898, science fiction novel that detailed a catastrophic Martian invasion of the Earth. Renowned for pioneering the alien invasion genre, and has been adapted numerous times, most notably in the 1953 film, then a 2005 Steven Spielberg production with Tom Cruise, The Heartthrob, 2019 television series, and a 2025 adaptation. Note that on the title page, he actually has a quote from Johannes Kepler. And if I can read it right, and this kind of foreshadows and sketches out the architecture of the novel. But who shall dwell in these worlds if they be inhabited? Are we or they the Lord of the world? You see the seed he's planting in the reader? Are we really as important as we think we are? Okay, I said there were several adaptations, but the one that perhaps is most infamous was the 1938 Halloween broadcast of the Mercury Theater of the Air by Orson Welles. Anyone in this room familiar with this broadcast? Yes, okay, a sizable minority in the room. That's fantastic. Now, Halloween in 1938 actually fell on a Monday evening. The Mercury Theater of the Air was regularly broadcast on a Sunday, so this was their Sunday broadcast. This was such a realistic radio play that it convinced many people who were listening that there was actually a Martian invasion taking place in America. The first half of the program was delivered in a realistic breaking news format with reporters breaking in. There were few commercial interruptions, and the first break came after fictional reporters had described a devastating alien invasion and the fall of New York City. Now, we're going to go a little deeper into this one, but let's listen to, say, the first 60 seconds. And once we get past the announcer and Orson Welles' deep voice, listen to how this is written. It's thrilling. Not getting anything. It's playing. Is the volume down again, perhaps on this end? Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen, technical services is arriving. This was tested earlier on and was working. Gold star. Yes, of course. It's running. Oh, here's something really like. Well, I can write you a vocal. So the apologies for the technical glitch. I am the fool. This 60-second clip begins with radio music from the late 1930s. It sounds like a scratchy big band. And then you get into Orson Welles' deep baritone voice talking about the concept of humans perhaps not being as important as we think we are, and how others who are much more advanced might look at us as we look at things that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. And he ends up by talking about how higher, more dangerous, more threatening life forms out there are making their plans against us. And then it breaks. That was my Orson Welles imitation. So this radio broadcast was so realistic for its place and for its time. Those are two important concepts, of its place and of its time, that some people were, excuse me? Okay. This broadcast was so realistic for its place and for its time that some people, really lots of people, reacted to it in a very extreme way. The New York Times, the next morning, this was their page one story above the fold, right under the masthead. Radio listeners in panic, taking war drama as fact. Talks about many fleeing to escape the gas raid from Mars. Phone calls swamped the police, etc., etc. Now, this wasn't just to the Northeast. This was across much of the United States. Here's Orson Welles trying to explain himself to the reporters the next day. That's a great picture. Very, very, very famous public response from its time. In fact, over on the other coast, the West Coast in California, the San Francisco Chronicle came out with a 6 a.m. extra edition. This is an extra edition in addition to the normal morning edition, afternoon edition that we have back then. Some of you may know that my background is print media, close to 40 years, and I was only ever involved in one special edition in those 37 years, and that was the morning of 9/11, when the building started to collapse. So the San Francisco Chronicle came out with a special edition. You can read that so-called foundry type headline, "Panic Sweeps US as Radio Stages Mars Raid." So people really did react at this time in this place. And if you happen, by the way, to have an earlier version of that book, you can get artwork like this, where you can see one of the Martian machines firing its death ray at Earth targets. There's looks like a side wheeler vessel beached over there. All right, so we're going to return to some of these folks in a short while, but let's get into the meat and potatoes of this presentation. And it's absolutely coincidental that we're sending people to the moon right now, and they took off about 90 minutes ago, because we're going to talk about the Great Moon Hoax. From 1835, it was published by, here's those newspapers again, it was published by the New York Sun. This particular hoax is regarded by historians and journalists, I'm a journalist, as one of the most successful and influential astronomy-related hoaxes in history. Certainly, it's recognized as groundbreaking, early instance of mass media fake news and satire. It successfully duped a significant portion of the public and even some scientific thinkers of that time. It involved this man, Benjamin Day, and this man, Richard Adams Locke, who were respectively the publisher and the editor of the new penny newspaper in New York, The Sun. It started in 1833, which is a couple of years before the hoax. I believe this is the first edition, and you can see in the top left corner, there's a, we would call it a brief, where it says published daily, and the text goes on to talk about the 1 penny price and how it is an affordable newspaper for every person. Up to that time, if you wanted to buy a newspaper, they're 5 or 6 cents, which was too much for an awful lot of people to buy a newspaper. So basically, we have a new business model out there in this growing and early mass media market. Their great moon hoax, which came out, as I said, a couple of years later, involved this. What is this? Well, let's look at the picture. It looks like bat-like people flying around, and we have some really odd animals on the ground. If you look at the little box in the lower left corner, it's a story, great astronomical discoveries lately made by Sir John Herschel, the son of William Herschel, the guy who discovered Uranus. Well, guess what? His son was a respected astronomer as well. And there is William Herschel. By the way, when this 6-part series came out, The Great Moon Hoax, William Herschel was nowhere to be seen. He was actually in South Africa doing astronomy. The New York Sun not only attributed these discoveries to Herschel, they published that this information was gleaned from a supplement to the Edinburgh Journal of Science. So right off the top, the Sun is attributing this to 1, Herschel, noted astronomer, 2, the Edinburgh Journal of Science, 2 authoritative, disciplined scientific sources of information. So I went looking to see if I could find the Edinburgh Journal of Science, and sure enough, I managed to find it at an internet archive in San Francisco. This front piece is actually from one of their, I think, 1824 editions. During the 6-part series, the New York Sun ran some sensational pictures. Here's one of them. The inhabitants of the moon, lunarians, they were called. There's those bat-like people. Now, look off to the right. You can see some odd-looking creatures. Some of them carrying infants by the looks of it, and there's some huts behind them. And between the bat-like people and those funny bear-like creatures, which are actually beavers, believe it or not, you can see what looks like an odd bull, perhaps, with horns. Now, this caused such a sensation during its time that it was republished in many places in Europe. Here is an illustration. I take it from an Italian publication, if I can read it right. It says, other new discoveries on the moon by Mr. Herschel. You can see the flying people, well, not people, the flying bat-like people, the lunarians. You can see the beaver standing on its hind legs, a bipedal beaver as opposed to a quadruped. And you can see some of the buffalo, but hang on a second. This monitor just went dim a little bit. Are we perhaps losing battery power? Oh, it's plugged in, all right. Okay, so let's stop and think about this for a second. Who is this guy? This guy is the Reverend Thomas Dick. He's actually a Scots clergyman / astronomer who practiced philosophy, combined science and Christianity, and he argued for the harmony between Christianity and science. He was such an authoritative voice in his time that the BBC has compared him to being a Carl Sagan and a Neil deGrasse Tyson of his day. That's the voice this guy had. So here is one of his publications. In this publication, it's about 400 pages. I admit I've only read about half a dozen. He argues that there's life everywhere. Not just the planets, but also their moons and even on Saturn's rings. He spoke of the moon being inhabited by rational creatures, and it featured vegetation and artificial structures made by these creatures. And it was his ideas heavily influenced the contemporary public of that time. His belief was rooted in the idea that God would not have created such an immense series of celestial bodies for them to be empty. Dick argued that creatures in other worlds were likely similar to humans, but perhaps endowed with superior capabilities. His writings were popular in both the UK and certainly the United States. I dug a little deeper into this book, which I found, I believe, in the Internet Archives in California, or was it the Smithsonian? I'm sorry, I can't remember. It might have been both. But as I said, I've only read a half a dozen pages here, but I can express the opinion that his argument that he builds here is solidly theocentric, solidly so. Take a look at that chart on the right page. Let's have a little closer look. In it, he estimates the populations of the planets. He estimates the populations of the moons. He estimates the populations on Saturn's outer ring, so on and so forth, for about 400 pages. I know when I finished reading the half dozen or so pages that I read through, I realized if he saw that I did some work on the Sabbath, he would be beating me with a cane. That's for sure. Solidly theocentric. So we have this set up in the culture of the day. Richard Adams Locke, the editor of the New York Sun, found that this was religion impinging on the freedom of science. So what he decided to do was a series of articles lampooning this. His words are paraphrased here. We'll give you the animals and we'll give you the landscapes that you think are there, and we'll dress it all up with scientific rhetoric. 6-part series. But what he didn't anticipate was that the people of New York, who had been schooled in these beliefs already, remember, of their time and of their place, and they simply believed the articles. They simply believed the articles because it was so much like what they had already come to believe and to expect. In fact, some people started raising money to send Bibles to the moon. Now, this editor had some ethics, I guess, because he was conflicted about the whole thing, but because he knew it was a hoax, and he decided, well, no, this really belongs to the publisher. So he didn't do anything about it. Now, the publisher, the New York Sun as well, wanted to profit as much as it could from this. After all, it was a new product selling for only a penny. So the paper republished the series in a supplement and published lithographs as well, sold them all. This thing was reprinted across the world, went viral before there was radio and TV and internet. In fact, I even found a couple of sources that said 2 academics from Yale, Denison Olmsted and Elias Loomis, went to the New York Sun to see the documentary evidence for this. And what happened at the Sun was they were sent from production to the news office, from the news office to production, from production to the news office, from the news office to production, and finally they went home. I found professional monographs for both of these now long gone academics, and they list an awful lot of accomplishments, including working with observing Halley's Comet in the same year, 1835. There's no mention whatsoever of the Great Moon hoax. None. I wouldn't put it in my CV either. So what did this do for the New York Sun? Well, their circulation skyrocketed. It went from roughly 4,000 to 19,000. That's almost a 5-fold increase. and it made it the most widely read newspaper in the world at that time. It got a long-term circulation boost. In fact, it remained permanently higher after the hoax. The reprints that it did of the series sold out. It was another revenue stream for them. They sold about 60,000 copies. The newspaper got international fame. And from a 50,000-foot level, it demonstrated the power of the penny press of the day. The Sun's business model, the penny paper, proved that it could engage the reader. Its narrative-driven content could dramatically boost readership among the general public. And here's the bottom line on this. If you want to raise circulation, guess what? You can charge more for your advertising. It's all about money. Now, that was a 6-part hoax. Do you think we've learned anything? Well, let's go to those supermarket tabloids. You remember that Bill Clinton piece? Well, that same newspaper, that same tabloid ran a series. The Clinton and Alien was just one of it. Here's one of the other ones in the same series. So, hey, if it works, go for it. Now, I tried to find copies online of the New York Sun with some of those 6 articles. I couldn't find it until I was waking up this morning. You know, when you're just between deep sleep and waking up, I think it's called the hypnagogic state, where suddenly you can see things clearly that you can't see for the rest of the day. I realized I hadn't looked for the supplement. So when I had my mug of tea, I went to the office and I started looking for the supplement. And sure enough, I found one in the University of California, and I found one in the Smithsonian, like 2 minutes. So here is the front cover of the one in the Smithsonian, and we're going to visit some of the content of some of these 6 articles here, and this is thrilling. I just love it. Obviously, it's a 50-page supplement, and the editor, the Sun's editor, has a little end piece. So this concludes the supplement. With the exception of 40 pages of illustrative and mathematical notes, which greatly enhance the size and price of this work without commensurate. All right. So the bottom line here is, this is the editor of the Sun acknowledging this is his stuff, and it's 50 pages. So on the reprint, here is the front piece. Again, astronomical discoveries by Sir John Herschel. No. And I think, if I had my other glasses on, I think it also has reference there to the Edinburgh Science Journal. Again, no. This one seems to be from the University of California. To someone who is literate in telescopes, as they read through this, they would have probably stopped here. When the author is describing, that Herschel is describing the telescope with a magnifying power of 6,000 times. Now, does anyone have an optical telescope that you can look through and get a magnification of 6,000? I know those plastic microscopes at the store that magnify up to 800 times. And even that is considered empty magnification. So if someone was literate in this sort of thing and they saw 6,000 times, they probably should have gone, what? Oh, come on. Next page. In the War of the Worlds and some other places, we saw some troubling, threatening, uneasy words used. Well, look here. We're describing the lunar surface through this fantastic telescope. Mare Mortuum, the lake of death. I don't think there's a lake of death on the lunar landscape anywhere. I know there's a Dead Sea in the Middle East, but not a lake of death. And here's some more scientific gobbledygook. Give them what they expect. Here, first applied are hydrogen-oxygen magnifiers to the focal image of that great lens. So he's describing the technology he's using. And I know it's not a solar telescope, Ralph, but this is pretty good for its day, I suppose, if you believed it. the whole breadth of the northern extremity of the sea, which is about 300 miles. Having crossed our plain, we entered upon a wild mountainous region abounding with more extensive forests of larger trees than we had seen before, the species of which I have no good analogy to describe. In general contour, they resembled our forest oak. Again, appealing to the prejudices and our beliefs of the day. Dr. Herschel has classified not less than 38 species of forest trees and nearly twice this number of plants. Of animals, he classified 9 species of mammalia, 5 of ovipara, which I believe are vipers, snakes. Among the former is a small kind of reindeer, the elk, the moose, the horned bear, the bipedal beaver. You've seen pictures of the bipedal beaver, walks around on its back feet. The last, resembles the beaver of the earth in every other respect. Then it's destitution of I love that turn of phrase, destitution of a tail, and its invariable habit of walking upon only 2 feet. It carries its young in its arms like a human being and moves with an easy gliding motion. Its huts, remember you saw the pictures of the huts? Its huts are constructed better and higher than those of many tribes of human savages. We're going to get into the more interesting stuff. It talks about perceiving large flocks of winged creatures, wholly unlike any kind of bird, and they descended with a slow, even motion from the cliffs on the western side to alight upon a plain. They were first noticed by Dr. Herschel. If ever we found beings in human shape, it would be in this longitude, and that they would be provided by their creator, here's that theocentric thing again, by their creator with some extraordinary powers of locomotion. Of course, they had wings. This lens, I don't know if it's a telescope or the other lens you're talking about, this lens soon introduced, gave us, yeah, he's just describing some of the technology. So go to the last sentence. Certainly, these creatures were like human beings, for their wings had now disappeared. I guess they were standing, and their attitude in walking was both erect and dignified. How lucky we are to see that. Here's one of those monographs. Do you fly like that? Sometimes? No. I like to think sometimes I do. Okay, why are people so gullible? Well, let's talk about that. So Richard Adams Locke, the editor, found that this was religion, we're repeating ourselves, found this was religion impinging on free thought of science, and what he decided to do was a series of articles lampooning this belief. We will give you the animals and the landscapes that you think are there, and I will dress it up with scientific rhetoric. Has anyone heard of the expression anchor bias? That's where an individual already has a certain mindset of beliefs, and where information is presented that easily fits into that set of beliefs, even if it's not actually accurate. One of the anchor biases that we might all be familiar with is if you go into a used car lot. Oh, I'll give you this car for, no, the car is $15,000, and the salesman says, well, I like you, I'll give it to you for $14,000. Your anchor bias is, well, I'm already saving $1,000 because it's supposed to be $15,000. The salesman is appealing to what you already know. There are other biases at work here. I won't go through them all in detail, but false positives, where things are interpreted as proof of theory. There's something called the Barnum effect, where there's a belief in vague, generalized descriptions. And the Barnum effect got its name after P.T. Barnum. Mistrust of authority, deliberate misinterpretation. I think we saw that for six stories in this newspaper. And there is critical thinking and assessing the information, which is an ever more important skill with AI and the internet. So one other aspect here is the historical period of that moment. There's a social context. You have your cultural surroundings. You have your environmental surroundings, including economic. Remember the Great Depression that Orson Welles was broadcasting at the end of? There's also the political reality, domestic and international. Let's return to the War of the Worlds for a second. 1938. In 1938, Europe and North America had witnessed the rise of Nazi Germany. And this concern, I've learned, heavily influenced the US public's panicked reaction to Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast. It was an invasion. Now, the audience was already experiencing severe anxiety over European war threats. So the war is less than a year away. And people of that generation, especially the adults, have fresh memory of the First World War and the slaughter that everyone was trying to avoid again. 4 weeks before this broadcast, there was the Munich crisis in Europe. It was a diplomatic standoff where basically Nazi Germany threatened war. Does it sound familiar? Does it sound like today? Threatened war unless Czechoslovakia ceded German-speaking Sudetenland to Germany. In other words, they wanted to take a chunk of, the Nazis wanted to take a chunk of Czechoslovakia. So the prime ministers from Britain, France, and Italy allowed the annexation. They just didn't consult Czechoslovakia. Let's look at that New York Times article on the radio listeners in panic one more time and see what else is there that gives us some more greater context. Look at the story to the right. With what we know now, that is just horrible. And this was the cultural milieu that the listeners to the War of the Worlds were part of. This helped influence their reaction. We'll lighten it up a little bit. Here is the favorite author of Ralph and I. But we can have some fun with him, can't we? Ralph? Let's do it. Now, I love going under the hood on a story or on a situation because you often find out other stuff which helps inform you about how something might have developed. And we're going to do that trip right now with Eric von Daniken. So, you know, he published millions and millions of books that were basically hoaxes. So this guy was then sentenced to 3.5 years in jail in Switzerland back in 1970. He was a hotel manager, I believe, at the time, and it turned out he had been committing 12 years worth of fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. He served 1 year of that 3.5-year sentence, and during that 1 year in jail, he wrote his second book. Can't keep a good man down, I guess. On his sentencing, the judge stated that his crimes were repeated and sustained forgery, embezzlement, and frauds. More about this guy. Age 19, he got a 4-month sentence for theft. Shortly after that, he moved to Egypt, where he was involved in some sort of jewelry deal, where he received a 9-month conviction for fraud and embezzlement. And by the way, his original book was heavily rewritten by someone else of his time, and this someone else was a gentleman named Utermann, who used the pseudonym of Wilhelm Rogersdorf. I'm sorry, my German is awful. Now, Utermann, in earlier times, was the Nazi Party newspaper's editor, and that Nazi newspaper was, I can't pronounce it, Volksischer Beobachter, and he had also been a best-selling author in Nazi Germany and a propagandist for the Nazi regime. Again, of his place and of its time, but this is the sort of person von Daniken is dealing with behind the scenes. And this is what he comes up with, among other things. That said, his authorship did cement long-term financial success. His book sales totaled nearly 80 million across the world. Now, he died just in the middle of January, just like 2 months ago. He was 90 years old, and his estate was roughly 30 million US, all built on those books. I know, I did. So we're going to Betty's favorite molecule, not the water molecule, right, Betty? It's interesting that this hoax is still out there. I found this. They're talking obviously about dihydrogen monoxide, and there's lots of scientific sounding information there. But, excuse me. But as I went down this page, there's some dense text in it. I found hope. And we all know that hope can be a curse, because down at the bottom, you discover this question. What do you think was the author's intended purpose in describing dihydrogen monoxide in this way? So this question is getting to the root of the hoax that dihydrogen monoxide is. This actually is part of a middle school course on assessing scientific information, critical thinking, and they use dihydrogen monoxide as a good, bad teaching example. And by the way, that newspaper in Michigan, when it published the dihydrogen monoxide hoax story, do you know what day they published it on? That's right, April 1st, April Fool's Day. So the motivation behind this parody was to play into chemophobia and to demonstrate how exaggerated analysis, information overload, and a lack of scientific literacy can lead to misplaced fears. Here's a bunny, our little kittens again. This was an internet hoax that came out in 2000. In 2000, the internet was still fairly new. This grad student wanted to test internet gullibility. And he found out very quickly there's a lot of gullibility out there in internet land, isn't he? Now, mind you, this also has lived on because there's a German rock band that has adopted the name Bonsai Kitten. Oh, I missed it. Oh, okay. It's a girl band in Germany, and they're pretty outrageous. So again, the Bonsai Kitten. Here's a headline: "The Battle for Truth in Cyberspace." Is it crazy that people would want to deform the skeletons of animals for aesthetic reasons? Well, we've done it to ourselves. You know, hundreds of these skulls have been found in Peru. And sometimes when you see reports on them, somehow the word alien gets into the headline. I made reference to that German girl rock band. There you are. There's one of their covers. I knew we had that somewhere. Okay, so we began this session, and thank you so much all for your patience and your courtesy and not throwing rotten tomatoes at me. When we began this session, we had a question, all right? Well, we're going to have another question. I'm sorry, it's a test. I apologize. Here's the question. In 2017, what did the publisher of Collins Dictionaries announce as the word of the year? Thank you for not going for your phone. Yes, Tom. That's your suggestion? Trickiness? Close. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a clue. It's on this hoax newspaper page at the top in red. Fake news. There's not a word or an image that is really factual on this page, except perhaps the masthead. Fake news. It's all fake news. So fake news is out there everywhere. Be aware of it. Be critical. If something's too good to be true, chances are it probably is. We're going to go to questions in a second, but how are we for time, Tom? Do we have a couple more minutes? Yeah. Thank you very much. Right. So when I was doing this, as you know, I was playing around with AI video, trying to create some interesting little ditties that we might be able to use legitimately here. I made many more than I could use, but I have a little 1-minute video here of some of them We haven't got Ralph coming back again. That's going to be the Redux next year when we get the appropriate co-star for you. So if it's okay with you, we'll just play this. There are lots of little things in here that have to do with RASC Toronto Centre. So enjoy, and hopefully the sound's going to come through. No, the sound's not coming through. There's that beaver again. So none of this is true. It was all done with text input. I would put in observatory with the sun behind it and RCMP on horseback. Didn't quite give me RCMP. EC car. EC car. The Dunlap Institute. Where's Mike Reed when you need him? And the Dunlap Institute one more time. AI had difficulty giving me mixed genders, so I had to do it this way. These guys get into an argument. And York, of course. And the car one more time. And I'm sorry you don't have the sound because you're going to hear Canada geese coming in here over the soundtrack that's already here. The thing, the overall production here begins with Stompin' Tom Connors talking about the hockey song. And then it morphs into the Canadians win right here. Anyhow, so none of that was true. It was all false. But I know nothing about this technology. This is my first kick at the can. You can imagine how remarkable someone who is familiar with this technology, how remarkable a product they can produce that's entirely false. Entirely false. Okay, so this is time for questions if we have any questions. Do we have any questions? It's been an honor to be here for you. Thank you very much for your patience, and I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something.
Okay, so no questions from the audience. One question online?
Thank you. One comment from Eric Biggs. The panic broadcast of 1938 was carried on CFRB radio in Toronto. Local newspapers interviewed astronomers at the Dunlap Observatory the very next day.
Wow, that's great. I'm going to add that to my next edition of this. Thank you very much, Eric.
All right.
Thank you,
then
everyone.
we'll just quickly flip over to fun facts when we'll get the announcements for the president.
Hi. I'm seeing little men coming out of a spaceship in my backyard. Hold on, wait a minute.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and that let me just pass you off for our announcements at the end of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, our president, Scott Masterton.
Thank you, Tom. And oh, there's some little men coming out of a spaceship in my backyard. Wait a minute. No, I guess not. Yes, I want to thank you for tuning in to listen to our presentation today, and I want to welcome you to let you know that we have 2 nights such as this, the RAN that you just experienced online, and the Speakers Night online only. We have 2 of these a month. So you can send in your questions, and if you're a new member, you can introduce yourself. Also like to remind you that the Carswell Observatory tours occur every Wednesday during the winter, and you can get more information at the website indicated. We'd like you to know that the DDO has a number of talks and events this month. Tom Talks Astronomy, The Quest for Alien Life, and that'll occur at the DDO on April 4th between 9 and 11. Also, with the DDO on April the 10th, how to use your telescope. If you have a new telescope and you're a little unclear on how to use it because it didn't come with an instruction booklet, you can get that information on April the 10th at the DDO. Tune in or check for the fees and registration at the active link. The DDO Astronomy Family Night will occur on April the 10th, the Da Vinci Glow. And you can get the information you need at the website, registration, and costs at the DDO. Our next speakers night in a couple of weeks, To the Moon with Robots and Humans, excuse me, and that will be at 7:30. Online only, and it's free to watch. Just tune in at the same place and the same station. The fee is free, and that's a live webinar. City Star Party, Bayview Village Park, Monday, April 20th. We're now resuming our public outreach with our members' scopes at the Bayview Village Park, and between 8 and 11. Check the site for go, no go. Millennium Square in Pickering, Public Star Party, April 24th or 5th. And again, you'll want to check the site to make sure that they have a go, no go. Anyone can go, it's free, and no registration is required. DDO again, Sunday stargazing on April 26th, 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. Look safely at the sun through our telescopes. Check for the fees at the website Active RH. DDO Astronomy Night, May 1st, the Flower Moon. Families will be introduced to the wonders of astronomy through a variety of exciting astronomy topics. And if weather permitting, you'll be able to look through the 74-inch telescope. It's the largest telescope available to the public. Fees and registration are at the website. Oh, and the Carr Astronomical Observatory, our observatory available to members throughout the year now, because we have arranged to remove the snow from the access road. The rain has already done that. We also had some information that the road might have been washed out because of that rain, so you want to check bookings to see check for availability. Also, we want to remind you about joining the RASC Toronto Center. You can do that at the national site at the indicated email address. And once you're a member, you can be a volunteer, because we need all the volunteers we can get. If you're interested in helping, you become a member, and if you have free time, we'd be pleased to hear from you at volunteer@rascto.ca. And the meeting after the RAND meeting. After the RAND meeting, we can get together for a social time at the VMV Bar and Grill, just south of the university's main entrance, free parking. And I want to thank you for tuning in. Have a great night.